What's up, everyone, and welcome to episode 21 of the Bronx and Big Blue Breakdown. I'm your host, Brady Heslin, and today we have a lot to talk about. We're going to talk about the Giants retaining general manager Joe Schoen, the Giants win over the Dallas Cowboys, along with some New York Yankees rumors. So, without further ado, let's get into it. And we're going to start with the big news, and that is the Giants retaining general manager Joe Schoen. He will be the general manager moving forward. He'll be getting a year 5, and I'm just going to give my thoughts. If you've listened honestly to any of the past probably 8 or so episodes, ever since Brian Dable got fired, I've been very adamant about the Giants firing Joe Schoen. I've wanted him fired last offseason, and after John Mara's comments after last offseason, I thought there was no way that the Giants would keep Joe Schoen after year 4 if he had a season like he had this year. Yet here we are, and Joe Schoen will be the GM for year 5, and will get the opportunity to hire a second head coach and basically get a fresh start in a way. So I have some notes here. Again, I am using some new equipment, so if you see me looking down or whatever, I'm trying to figure out the best way to do this still. So just bear with me for a little bit. I'll move over here, but so Joe Schoen's record so far as GM is 22-45-1. I mean, you start right there. That's terrible. That is completely terrible. He's had 4 years to build this team, and that's the record he's had. Since their 7-2 start in 2022, as you all know, they got out to a hot start. The Giants are 15-43-1. That's completely terrible. The past 3 years, the Giants have had the second worst record, just behind, or I guess in front of the Tennessee Titans. It's just a total slap in the face. It's clear the Giants' standards are gone. I mean, Tom Coughlin was fighting for his job after year 4, after making the playoffs in back-to-back years. And then there's Joe Schoen, who's won 7 games the past 2 years, and he's just completely safe and is going to lead a head coach search. Uh, the Falcons general manager. So if you guys didn't know or didn't hear, the Falcons fired their head coach and GM last night after 5 years of the GM. Raheem Morris was there for, I believe, 2, and the GM was there for 5. He had a record of 37-48. Joe Schoen and the Giants would have to go 15-2 next year just to tie that. 16-1 would pass that, and he just got fired for their performance. So it's clear the Falcons have higher standards than the Giants do at this point. And, getting into more of the moves that Joe Schoen has messed up, I mean, you get into draft pick busts, swing and miss on Evan Neal. Deontay Banks, he's not a good corner. Maybe they find a spot for him as a returner, but that's not what you want your first round pick to be. They traded up for Jalen Hyatt in the 3rd round. He can't even get on the field over the returner. Josh Azudu, total bust in the 3rd round. JMS is at best an average center in the 2nd round. Kayvon Thibodeau, he's a good player, but was he worth the 5th overall pick? That's tough to say. And they're going this way. That's how the team is going. If you're listening, they're going down. They won 9 games, their first year. Then they won 6, then they won 3, then they won 4. It's not like Dave Gettleman's roster. They won 3 games, then they won 4, then they won 6, then they won 9. No, they're going the opposite direction. The best year under Joe Schoen was the year where they didn't have his roster. It was Dave Gettleman's roster. And when you think about the top draft picks for Joe Schoen, obviously Malik Neighbors, Abdul Carter, Jackson Dart, those are probably the 3 best draft picks. I mean, maybe you could throw Wandale Robinson in there if you want, or Kayvon Thibodeau, but those are all high draft picks. And the old saying is, Super Bowl, you win Super Bowls in day 3 of the draft, and Joe Schoen really has not done great on those picks. I mean, you have Cam Scatterbo, who looked really good, but coming off the injury, you don't want to say that you don't want to completely say that's a win. Tyron Trace looks good right now. I mean, you can't crown Marcus Bowe. Like it's too early to say that. Yeah, he's had some really bad draft classes. I mean, if you look at the Giants draft classes, I'm actually going to pull this up. He's also admitted to drafting for need in the past. He admitted today that he would draft players for specific schemes. I think Deontay Banks certainly fits into that. He looked a lot better under Wink Martindale than Shane Bowen. Um, so here are Joe Shane's drafts. So his first draft, 2022, the Giants had a lot of picks. It was Kayvon Thibodeau, Evan Neal, Wandale Robinson, Josh Azudu, Cordell Flott, Daniel Bellinger, Dane Belton, Micah McFadden, DJ Davidson, Marcus McKeithen, Darian Beavers. I would say, day three picks. I mean, Dane Belton's a decent special teamer in the fourth round. Mike McFadden's okay in the fifth. 2023, this is the really bad draft. You have Deontay Banks, John Michael Schmitz, Jalen Hyatt, Eric Gray, Trey Hawkins, Jordan Riley, Javarius Owens. I mean, the Giants got really nothing out of that draft. I mean, the only guy that's really contributing in a positive way is JMS, and he's at best average at center. 2024, you have Malik Neighbors, Tyler Newman, Andrew Phillips, Theo Johnson, Tyron Tracy, and Darius Muasau. Neighbors is obviously a superstar. Tyler Newman got worse this year. Drew Phillips, he's not looking great. He's a really, inconsistent player. Theo Johnson can't catch the ball. I think he's probably more of a tight end too, which is okay in the fourth round. Then Tyron Tracy is good for the fifth, and Muasau is not great in the sixth. And then 2025, I mean, you can't really claim any or say these guys are studs yet necessarily, but I mean, Abdul Carter and Jackson Dart. I think those are two good picks as of right now. We'll see if they continue to develop. But then, Darius Alexander got better as the year went on, but still is improving as a run defender. You have Scadaboo, Bo, then Fedoni and Corey Black are the seventh runners that haven't really done much. So he's struggled in the draft, especially later on, as you can see there. Game day roster mismanagement. This might be my biggest gripe of Joe Schoen, honestly, is just the little things. He does not do them. I mean, the kicker situation immediately comes to mind for me. I mean, this would have been so easy to fix. Just cut Grandpa Gano. Just cut Graham Gano. I mean, he was old, bad, and injured, and you saved over $3 million by cutting him last offseason. For a team that was like pressing for cap space. I mean, they're constantly restructuring deals. And then, you have June McAtomney, who can't kick, Younghoe Koo's terrible, Ben Sauls, is looking good, but like it's just that situation is so frustrating. I mean, the Giants lost multiple games because they didn't have a kicker because Graham Gano was hurt. The Jalen Hyatt thing, wasting a roster spot, I've talked about it so many times. Having him on the team over Amir Smith-Marset, over, bringing like Xavier Gibson at one point was on the practice squad too. When you don't have a returner, so you have your starting safety, Javon Holland, returning punts a couple weeks ago. Evan Neal was on the 53 all year, never even played a snap. I mean, he's just wasting roster spots, and the Giants rolled with two running backs for like 4 weeks at one point before Eric Gray got activated off PUP. It's just little things like that is just, it's so bad. And then free agency. He hasn't been great in free agency. I mean, look at this past offseason. Paulson Adebo isn't looking like a very good signing right now. Javon Holland is, they let Xavier McKinney go, and then they bring in Javon Holland for similar money, and it's clear that Javon Holland is a worse player than Xavier McKinney. The Daniel Jones contract, I mean, I don't care what it looks like at the time. I mean, like, at the end of the day, that was not a good contract. And then, you can have your own opinions about Saquon, but at the end of the day, that's on Joe Schoen's resume. James Hudson, like a little move like that, like trying to get, paying $5-6 million for James Hudson to be the swing tackle, and he's just terrible. Like he's a healthy scratch now. And this is all just off the top of my head, Bobby Okereke, I don't think that's not like a bad contract at all, but like he hasn't been the player necessarily wanted to be. He's gotten worse, in his time here. So it's just a lot of little things, but then a lot of big things too. And I'm getting really in depth on this, but if you're more of a casual or whatever, just look at the record. I mean, he is 22, 45, and 1. And in the NFL, it is so much easier to just do a full reset. It's so much easier. Just get the GM and then get the head coach. Joe Schoen's also, he signed a 5-year deal when he joined the Giants in 2022, before that season. At this point, I honestly hope they extend him. I know that sounds crazy, but I think a lot of head coaches are not going to want to come to the Giants when you have a lame duck general manager. And then I also think Joe Shane's not going to make the certain moves for the franchise. Think about it. If he's on a 1 year deal, he'll go all out with cap space, maybe make some crazy trades and that kind of thing. Like, you don't want that. If they could give him a 1 or 2 year extension, I honestly think that'd be the best thing for the franchise at this point, considering they are keeping him. I mentioned this earlier, but just deterring candidates, it's not that I don't think they can get a good candidate. It's just I don't know if they're going to get their necessarily option. Let's say Kevin Stefanski, for example. I think he's at the top of the Giants list. I think he should be at the top of the Giants list. But, you know, um, let's say he's between the Falcons and the Giants. The Falcons, they have a clean slate, that kind of thing. And then, or do you want to go to the Giants where you got that lame duck general manager? I don't know what Stefanski would do, but I don't want to put him in that position. Um, the last thing, I'll probably end up saying something else in this episode, but the last thing I have to say right now is um, I understand John Mayer has cancer. I understand he's sick. If you guys saw that video after the game yesterday, he really does not look good. It's truly heartbreaking. But, you know, I don't want to say, like, it sounds weird saying this because I know he's sick and that kind of thing, but this is his fault. This is at least partially his fault. There should have been a succession plan in place. John Mara was diagnosed with cancer in September. That's when the news broke. So chances are he knew um, before, like probably long before that, he knew that something was up with his health. There should have been a plan in place, whether it's Chris Mara, Tim McDonald, Steve Tisch. There's no reason that the Giants, should not be able to run a GM search right now because John Mara is ill. This is a huge ownership group. There's another, 50% owner. Chris Mara, his son, works in the building. Tim McDonald, his nephew, works in the building. If you don't want to do that, if maybe you want some short-term thing because John Mayer doesn't want to, give up power or whatever, bring in an independent firm. We have seen teams do this all the time. The Falcons are doing it right now with their head coach and their GM. Teams have done this in the past. I think Washington did it, I believe, at some point. You bring in an independent firm and they help you with the search. Let's say you don't want to do that. Okay, that's fine. Bring in a former player or something like that. I mean, the Dolphins are bringing in Troy Aikman right now to help with their GM search. Like, that's so random. You could do, a guy like Eli Manning, Michael Strahan, even bring in Tom Coughlin or like I don't know. I'm just throwing names out, but like I think you get the point. I mean, there's so many ways that this could have been done, and I feel like John Mayer's, sickness is a reason that Joe Schoen is not fired. I genuinely believe if John Mara was full health, even if he didn't necessarily want to fire Joe Schoen, I think there are people in the building that could have talked him into it, and I think he would have done it. I really do. I think a pretty good reason why Joe Schoen is still the GM of the Giants is because of John Mayer's health. And I'll say this, I know I'm being critical of him right now. I really hope for the best. I really hope he pulls through because I will say, one thing I really am thankful for as a Giants fan is he cares, the owner cares. And, I have some friends of like friends that are fans of teams, or, I see teams where, their owner doesn't really care at all. I'm glad John Mara at least cares. He really does. He really cares about this team. He really wants the best, but it's just a really unfortunate situation. And that's kind of all I have to say about it. So that took longer than I thought it was going to be honest. And if you disagree with me, go ahead, comment. The actual last thing I'll say is I'm rooting for Joe Schoen. I'm a Giants fan. I'm not going to root against him because I don't think he should be the GM. I hope he proves me wrong. I really do. I hope he's the guy. I hope he's here long term and he can turn it around for this team. But I don't have much faith in him. I'm just going to be honest. I really don't have much faith in Joe Schoen. All right. So enough Joe Shane talk. We can now talk about the game, the final Giants game of the 2025-26 season. Start by saying it's a bittersweet feeling. It really is. This team has been so bad the past 2 years. It's really been tiring to be a Giants fan, but it does stink, when football season is over, every Sunday, occasionally a Thursday or Monday, you're able to turn on Giants game and kind of just forget the outside world for a little bit. At least for me, I'm always, pretty locked in on the games. I mean, the past couple weeks have been a little bit tougher to do that, but it stinks, and football is such a short season, and we got to wait all the way until August for preseason football, and then September for some actual meaningful football, and it's a long off season. Um, but yeah, the Giants won 34-17. They did lose the number 2 overall pick. They'll be picking 5th in the draft. Jackson's are another great game, and that was the main thing I was looking for in this one. I'm pulling up the box score right now, and actually just um, X'd out on me. Trying to get back in. Here we go. He was 22 for 32, 230 yards, 2 touchdowns, and then on the ground he was 5 for 32. I'll say this: it is nice to end the season on a 2-game win streak under Jackson Dart and not an 11-game losing streak, especially going against 2 of the worst defenses in the NFL, and the Raiders and the Cowboys, who also were actively trying to lose. They were essentially treating it like a preseason game. They pulled almost all the starters at halftime. There's no Prescott, CeeDee Lamb, George Pickens in the second half, but still nice to get a win nonetheless, especially against Dallas. Um, did I want them to lose this game? Yeah. I mean, the number 2 pick would have been huge for trade downs, especially considering the Giants don't have a 3rd-round pick this year, so they're picking at 37, then they have to wait all the way to 105. Um, number 2 pick would have just been so valuable for trading, but that's beside the point. 2 straight 30-plus game performances. I don't know if you guys remember, but there was a time when the Giants could never break 30 points. I mean, it was over like a season and a half at least. I think it was around when Joe Judge was the head coach. But the Giants just could not break 30 points, and now it feels like they're doing it pretty easily. I mean, they did it last 2 weeks. We had no McNeighbors, no Cam Scadaboo, and then this week no Wanda Robinson, no Theo Johnson both weeks, no Andrew Thomas. So that is a really nice thing to see. Tyrone Tracy hit 1,000 scrimmage yards. Good for him. One of the only Giant, I think it was 3rd Giant ever to have 1,000 scrimmage yards in the first 2 seasons. Good for him. Obviously missed some games. Was kind of like the RB2 for a little bit with Scadaboo. So it's good for him to get there. He had a big game this week. He was 18 for 103 on the ground, and then 5 for 56 or excuse me, 8 for 56 and a touchdown in the air. So good for Tyrone Tracy. I'm feeling a lot better about him than I did just a couple weeks ago. He's looked a lot better, more shifty, explosive, kind of hitting the holes a little bit better. Now a super interesting thing. Gunnar Olszewski had over 100 yards receiving. I mean, this was unbelievable. I think this is honestly a bit embarrassing for the Giants, just considering you have your 3rd-round pick who you traded up for a healthy scratch, and you have your returner at receiver who went 8 for 102. This was also a huge testament to Jackson Dart. I mean, he was throwing. I mean, here's the guys that got targets for the Giants this week. You have Gunnar Olszewski, Tyrone Tracy, Daniel Bellinger, Darius Slayton, Chris Manhertz, and Isaiah Hodgins. And Jackson Dart was able to put up 30-plus points. And those numbers I just said, just truly remarkable. Just crazy. I mean, I'm not going to overreact to it. I mean, Gunnar Olszewski is not really a future of this team. I would like to see them bring him back as a returner and depth at receiver. I still don't think he's a very good receiver. I mean, they were playing the worst defense in the league with backups, so just crazy. I mean, he beat his season high ever just in this game alone with 102 receiving yards. So a great job by Gunnar Olszewski, I guess. He is actually pretty good in plays that kind of go off schedule or that kind of thing. Like if Jack starts to scramble, he was pretty good in the scramble drill and just finding some soft spots in the zone. Jermaine Illuminor has been kind of frustrating recently. I feel like he just has a lot of penalties, false starts, holding. He had a legal man downfield this week. It's between Mondo Robinson, Drain Illuminor, and Cordell Flott, the Giants have some real tough decisions to make this offseason. And that's the thing with Joe Schoen, too. Like, Giants have a lot of holes, and they don't have a lot of ways they can fill them. They don't have a ton of cap space. They don't have a third-round pick. They have a decent amount of starters going to free agency. I mean, you've got Wandale Robinson, you have Jermaine Illuminor, Greg Van Roten, um, on defense, Micah McFadden, Cordell Flott. So that's at least five starters right there that you're gonna have to replace, whether that's bringing guys back or, um, signing guys to the draft and that kind of thing. But yeah, back to the game though. Yeah, it's kind of frustrating there. I mean, Jadeveon Clowney had 3 sacks this game, and that's just unacceptable. And then on defense, another pretty good game for Abdul Carter. He's looked better as the last couple of games as he did kind of in the middle of the season. No sacks for Burns, so he ends at 16 and a half. Dexter Lawrence didn't play a ton due to an illness. Interception for Bobby Okereke. He's finally producing turnovers in games that don't even matter. He's a likely cut candidate. We'll talk more about that probably in future episodes. Not really a ton to take away, though, from the defense. I mean, Joe Milton's really bad. Deontay Banks got benched for Rico Payton. Just trying to see. I mean, no sacks is not very good, along with allowing 143 yards on the ground against a bunch of backups. It's not very good, but yeah, I mean, Ben Sauls was perfect. He's been perfect for the Giants. I think he definitely deserves a futures contract and should compete. Let me say this again. He should compete for the kicker job next year. If Ben Sauls is the only option at kicker next year, I'm going to be upset because, yeah, he's been perfect, but he hasn't really been tested, and it's only been a couple games. We've seen kickers go on hot streaks and then be terrible. So it should be Ben Sauls versus another guy, and they should compete in training camp, and they should actually kick and, see who, is the better option at kicker. Yeah, that's about all I got for this game. Again, bittersweet feeling. It's nice to get a win, but at the same time, hurts the draft pick a pretty good amount. It just stinks that we'll be breaking down a game again until August, and then a meaningful one not until September. So it's my final Giants game recap of the year. So kind of crazy. We'll now move on to the Yankees, and they're finally giving me a little bit to talk about this week. Not a ton, but a little bit. First thing I want to talk about is the Edward Cabrera rumor. So it came out this week that the Yankees are reportedly interested in talking with the Marlins about a potential Edward Cabrera trade. We knew Brian Cashman wanted to bring in a starting pitcher this year. We know that. Garrett Cole, Clark Schmidt, Carlos Rodon, we're not sure if those guys are going to be ready for opening day. So, they're going to want to bring in somebody for the starting rotation. So, my Chromebook was getting low on battery, so I went and plugged it in. And I recorded the rest of the episode, but for some reason, something didn't work, and I can't find the video. So I'm going to be re-recording this part of the podcast. I hope I hit on everything and that kind of thing. But I was talking about Edward Cabrera. So if we look at his numbers from this past year, actually the first thing I'll mention, because I have it pulled up, is his contract situation. So he isn't a free agent until 2029. So I think that's definitely a big reason why the Yankees are going after him. If you look at his numbers, he's been solid. He's 27, almost 28 years old as well, so he's still pretty young. His stats here, sorry, I got to pull him back up. I'm a little frustrated. I don't know what happened. I recorded it, stopped recording, went into my files, and it just isn't there. So I don't know what happened there. Um, but he threw 137 and two-thirds innings. He had 100 and where is it? Sorry, 150 strikeouts, 3.83 ERA, 1.228 WHIP, a 3.83 FIP. I don't think it'll take a ton, to trade for him, and I definitely, would be interested in getting another starter and just improving this team overall. He's got a good sinker, good stuff, and we will see if the Yankees can make a deal there. So I feel like my camera's not like how I want it to be. Yeah, and then the second thing is the Yankees have a second official offer out there to Cody Bellinger. So they had one offer out there, then they put out another one. So hopefully that market gets going soon. I really think they're kind of waiting on Kyle Tucker to see what he gets, and then we'll go from there. But hopefully within the next week or two, we'll have an update on Cody Bellinger, and hopefully he is uh, back with the Yankees. Um, Yankees signed Paul DeYoung to a minor league deal. Good depth, only be like $1 million if he makes the team. We'll see Evan compete a little bit at the shortstop spot. They got to bring in guys to compete with Volpe. They really can't just give him that job um, at short. That's about it. Not a ton again on the Yankees front, just a bunch of rumors, no actual moves. They haven't brought in anyone on a major league deal from outside the organization all off season. So a bit frustrating there. But they got to get something going considering spring training's in a little over a month. Um, Now moving on to studs and duds. So it's kind of a big segment. It'll be the final studs and duds. Um, segment with including Giants players until next August. I don't plan on giving out any during the off season, barring anything kind of crazy. So we'll see, but I don't really plan on doing that. Um, my first dud is Jackson Dart. I think this is pretty obvious. 30 plus points with a bunch of not very good players. To be frank, I gotta get stuff pulled up again. Sorry. I feel like it was going so good. Like I had such a good episode. Um, and then it's so frustrating, that it didn't come up or whatever. Jackson Dart was 22 for 32 for 230 yards and two touchdowns, and then 5 for 32 on the ground. Again, pretty easy choice here for me, giving Jackson Dart a stud. Another one is Garner Olszewski. This dude has been a great returner all year. Only, I believe, one fumble returning, and that wasn't even really his fault. It was helmet-to-helmet contact. Basically got knocked out, had a concussion, and fumbled against the Patriots. But outside of that, and he's been a great returner. And he was 8 for 102 this week receiving, so I feel like he deserves some recognition and to be a stud. The next one is Tyron Tracy. Again, 1,000 yards from scrimmage on the year. Had a big week this week. And he showed really great resilience. Going from getting the starting spot taken away by Scadaboo, and then he got the injury with the shoulder, and just worked his way back. Only one fumble all year, and that was in this game. So great job by Tyron Tracy, and he gets a stud. And the two duds, the first one is the draft pick. Again, going from one last. He got the injury with the shoulder, and just worked his way back. Only one starting spot taken away by Scadaboo, and then he got the injury with the shoulder, and just worked his way back. Only one fumble all year, and that was him. So great job by Tyron Tracy, and he gets a stud. And the two duds, the first one is the draft pick. Again, going from one last week to two, and now from 2 to 5. Really hurts the trade down value. Again, I think just a trade down would have been huge for the Giants, and unfortunately, they're not going to be able to do that now. And then the second dud is Giants fans, because I think Giants as an organization have lost all standards. Feels like a huge slap in the face keeping Joe Schoen. Just just been such a tiring, last 2 seasons, winning 7 games. When there's teams out there like the Falcons, for example, they win 8 games the last 2 years, and it's not good enough, and they fire their head coach and their GM. I wish the Giants had standards like that. Again, like Tom Coughlin had to fight for his job after 4 years, making the playoffs in the last two. And then there's Joe Schoen, who's won 22 games the last 4 years and gets to keep his job. So those are my studs and duds. Now for this week in history. On New Year's Day, 2012, the Giants defeated the Cowboys 31-14 to win the NFC East. And hopefully, the Giants can get back there, soon enough. This sparked their Super Bowl run. Um, and yeah, there's no excuses, coming up for Joe Schoen. There's really not. It's playoffs or get out, in my opinion, because there's no more excuses. He's blamed the head coach. He's blamed the quarterback. He's put out all the excuses in the book for his draft picks and this and that. No more excuses, in my opinion. Either you're in the playoffs or you're done. If I have to, I'll bring this back out next year when I go to another game, the fire Schoen. I hope I don't have to do it. I hope I'm wrong and he can, be here for years to come and he turns his team around. But I don't have a lot of faith in him to be the guy that does that. But hopefully he does. And then for the Yankees, on January 5th, 1920, the Yankees acquired Babe Ruth from the Boston Red Sox, $425,000. That's a little over $2 million in today's money. And that move transformed the Yankees into baseball's premier franchise. One of the biggest trades of all time was Babe Ruth going to the Yankees, and that got them a lot of World Series rings. And now looking forward, we actually have a lot of stuff to look forward to. The first thing is I am planning to post a head coaching candidates video later this week. I'm hoping to have it out probably Wednesday or Thursday at the absolute latest. I will have it out on Friday. I'm gonna be casting a wide net. I want to have a ton of candidates on there. If the Giants hire a guy that I don't have in that video, I'm gonna be quite upset. I really want to try and cover all the bases. And then after the Giants hire a head coach, I am planning on doing a defensive coordinator video and then probably an offensive coordinator video because I doubt Mike Kafka will be back, and I don't think he should be back either. So that's the plan for this week. And then I'm also going to be doing awards for the Giants next week. I didn't do it for the Yankees because I didn't cover them long enough, but I will be doing awards for the Giants. I know I say this every week, but especially this week, please follow me, especially my Instagram and my X. I'm also trying to post more TikTok, so that's beside the point. But Instagram and X is where I'm going to be having the awards voting. You guys will be the ones who decide who win these awards. I might vote on my own poll, just so I have some sort of say. But yeah, I'm planning to do like offensive player of the year, defensive player of the year, probably offensive rookie of the year and defensive rookie of the year, even though we know he's going to win both of those. I want to do a coach of the year. There's a guy in mind that I really want to win that award. I'm going to do most improved player, most disappointing player, probably a couple others that I'll think of, as the year goes on, like best moment of the year, something like that. But I think again we know what that's going to be. So that will be announced next Monday. So again, I'm probably going to post them over the weekend. That's my plan. So please follow my Instagram. Please follow my X. That's where I'm going to be posting the awards. And I want to get a lot of votes on those and get out the first Bronx the Big Blue Breakdown awards. And the last thing I'll say is just thank you guys for the support. I kind of threw this together a little bit, in August, late August, early September, kind of threw it all together. And I was able to cover this entire Giants season. I didn't miss a week. I know, kind of iffy on posting on Mondays. I know this one will be out late, mostly because of this stupid thing didn't show up. But just thank you guys for the support. The views have been going up. Followers been going up, so I really appreciate that. I know hasn't been easy. It hasn't been easy for me to cover this team. Sure, it hasn't been easy for you to listen to these week in and week out. But I I try my best. Um, I know I'm pretty new to this, so I have a lot of stuff to learn and that kind of thing. But just thank you guys for the support. Again, please like, follow, subscribe. Link in the description for all of my social medias. And I'll see you guys later this week for the head coaching candidates video. Let's go Yankees and let's go Giants.